Thank you, Anna, and thank you for the wonderful privilege and honor to being able to join the Process Mining Camp. It's my second year here. There are some familiar faces, and I really want to take you today through the journey that Dimension Data took on establishing process mining as a thing in the organization. I'm from South Africa. Thank you very much, Anna. And I want to take you through, as I said, the journey that we took and some of the hurdles that we encountered on introducing process mining into the business. I want to also then stop later on 4 specific examples that we are going to talk about how we use these examples as part of a business case to actually build process mining in our organization. And each one of you will have different challenges in your organizations. You'll have different business models, just like we'll have different ones. But I want to paint the picture of what Dimension Data does, in short, the size of it, and that'll give you then the idea of the challenges we faced. But before we get there, a little bit of background about myself. I started in the IT industry about 25 odd years ago, and I was allowed to load paper into printers. That was my first job. Good MVS mainframe line printing days. I don't know if anybody of you still remember bursting and decollating paper. Yes? Anybody? Absolutely. So we know what that is all about. So that's where I started. And then I moved on in the technical environment. I did some programming, eventually became a database administrator, and then moved into the service industry. And that's really where my technical side became less, and the penny started to drop for me on how important it was to provide proper end-to-end services to clients. So I was very fortunate to, after spending some time in the outsource industry, join Dimension Data, and I've been with them for roughly around 8 years. So Dimension Data, a bit of an overview of what we do. You'll see the slide on the screen. We have approximately 6,000 odd clients globally. We also have 31,000 employees, technicians, that service these clients globally across the world. So just those numbers in itself paints a good picture of the size of the challenges we have if we want to introduce any form of standardization and standardized services to our clients. We're also on a very strong drive to obviously increase revenue, increase margins, etc., just like any other business. And we very quickly realized that one of the vehicles that we had to use to do that is to standardize on the way that we service our clients across all the entities that we have in the world. So here's a quick map, landscape of where we play and some of our partnerships. You'll see it's global. So you can imagine getting 31,000 employees to follow the same incident management process, the ITIL process, so that when they service an international or a multinational client with an office in Chile, South America, an office in Australia, an office in France, that they get the same experience so that we could up our client experience and our client satisfaction. A challenge indeed. So how did we go about this? We realized that introducing process mining into our organization as process mining in itself was very difficult. Because historically, we're very entrepreneurial, so each region, each department, each country would manage their own finances, would sometimes manage their own clients in their own way and the unique structure. So we had to bring more to the business than just process mining, and certainly more than a tool. So we decided on embarking to create a whole business case. And this business case was built on 3 legs, and we'll go into a lot more detail later on. The first leg was the processes. Now, I touched on trying to standardize a specific incident management process as an example across these various regions. We did that. We created a program called SMSO, and that stands for Standardized Managed Service Operations. A huge program to take all the ITIL processes that we know, go into the business, do a business discovery, understand what the business needs and how they use that specific process or not, then create a standard process that will benefit the entire organization, making it efficient, making it effective, and then go and adopt that into each one of these regions. So that was the program that we're on. And as part of that program, process mining was absolutely needed, because the first leg was to look at the existing processes, process mine that, and understand what actually happens in reality, and you all know how that happens with process mining. Then, having known the reality out on the field, matching that with the theoretical best practice from ITIL, and I mean this with a great respect because you need to marry the two, because business will do their own thing, as we all know, and operations are masters at doing that. And they will do things for the right reasons because they want to service their clients, but it might not be to the greater benefit of the group. And that's where we had to get the penny to drop. So we had to focus on the first leg around processes. And focusing on processes, there was a compliance flavor to that. So we were able to use process mining then, and I'll go into more detail, but for the compliance checking of these processes. The second very important leg was a growth leg. Because of our rapid acquisition, our rapid expansion drive in the business, strategically, we needed to make sure that we make process mining available as part of our growth strategy. And there we were very, very fortunate to be able to do that and build our process mining center of competence or center of excellence on, firstly, processes and the compliance thereof, second one, growth, and third one, leg that we built it on, and that is really the operational focus or the operational arm of it. And I must confess, maybe a little bit of my background has caused me to be an operational, I have an affinity to operations in the outsource industry, and I truly believe that process mining will probably give you some of the best benefits in the operational space of your business. Because that's where real value, that's where the technicians and the actual client get serviced, and that's where real value lies. And if you are able to inculcate process mining as part of your operational processes, then you derive that value immediately, and it's directly derived to the client. So, those are the three legs that we built our business case on. As I said, process, growth, and operations. So now on to a little bit of some of these examples. What we found is that we ran into a lot of resistance in the business when we mentioned process mining. And that was quite strange because us in this room, we love process mining. That's why we're here. We think it's the best thing since sliced bread. But unfortunately, business out there might not even have heard of this. So for them, the first hurdle is a mindset hurdle. We need to do a lot of organizational change management when you want to do process mining. So we had to answer questions like, this is very technical, this is niche, this is highly theoretical, and it's not practical. And we actually had to get time in people's diaries at a very senior level to show them the nice pretty pictures that you can get from Disco, to show them what process mining is all about, so that they could try and understand why they would need to invest time and money, but especially resources, to be trained up to do process mining and give them the benefit. So what we did, as I said, we spent time in people's diaries. We took a lot of effort in trying to convince the senior management to make them understand in each one of these countries and to give us a specific owner, because that's key, or that was key in Dimension Data, to get a regional owner to say, I am Region ABC's process mining expert, champion, driver, the person to go to when you want to do process mining. And we found that was actually how we opened those doors that were previously closed to us. So now we had these champions in our organization in these regions, and they wanted to jump in and do process mining, and we ran into quite an interesting brick wall that I'm sure none of you experienced, and that's called data. Because data is always structured, it is always clean, and it works, yes? In Dimension Data, you'll see on the top left hand, we roughly receive about 22,000 new calls operationally. That's now incidents being logged every day. Now, to manage 22,000 incidents, and then trying to process mine this for a specific region, for a specific department, maybe for a specific service, is a bit of a challenge. When we tried to do that, we realized quickly that our transactional systems simply didn't cope with the metrics we needed. So first off, we took a step back and we decided to let's build some metrics around how we're going to measure and at least timestamp the various data elements during a task's life cycle. So we had a look at the metrics. We defined those metrics, and now suddenly those metrics were being written out to log files. Fantastic. We had a look at it, and then we realized that we ran into the second problem. Our log files just couldn't cope with it. So we started wrapping log files around every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on volume. Which meant that if we wanted to do our utmost process mining, we had a 4-week thin slice window of the world, which really didn't mean much for us. We needed to have a lot more data, because we needed to see if we introduce anything, any service improvement program into the organization, and that might run for 6 months. So what happens at month 7 when we re-look at the history? Can I compare 13 months back or 7 months back to see how my improvement drive actually made a difference in the organization? So the next project was launched, and that was what we called an operational data store. Some people would term it a warehouse. Now we have 4 main transactional systems in Dimension Data that we use. You'll see top to bottom, ServiceNow ITSM, that's where we log the technical tasks, incidents, events, changes, etc. We have our SAP ERP, which we run, and then we have Salesforce and DD Direct, which is part of the quoting systems and our sales enablement tier 1 systems. So now we wanted data from all 4 of these elements, and we managed to pull that into an operational data store, which housed all the history. It was robust, it's big, and it can handle all those records. So at least now, we have a repository where all these metrics that we were monitoring in the transactional system is copied away and stored. So that if the log file then wraps around on the operational system, it doesn't matter, we don't need to refer to it, that's maybe real time where you can have a look at it, but now we have this stunning data warehouse. And then we ran into the next problem. This data warehouse or operational data store was so large and housed such a disparate amount of data that we couldn't allow anybody in the business to have a view of it, because in there we had HR data, in there we had financial data, and we have transactional data. All the data is there. So we needed to create little windows, and we did that by creating what we called a business data model. So a business data model is really just that, is where you create a little window with a specific set of access that you in your department need. So you can have full access to your data, all the history that we could manage to import into the ODS, but there's a logical separation and it keeps it nice and clean. So here we're just depicting some of the departments and some of the BDMs that we've built so that we can have a look and mine the data properly. So now we had the data, we had the metrics built, we have the ODS, and we had the BDM. So what were the next steps? Remember, we based our case study, our business case rather, on those 3 legs. The first one was process and compliance. So now we had the data. We had the standardized processes that we're churning out into the regions and into operations, and now we were able to check whether it was actually working. So what did we do? We needed to do some health checks or audits. We tend to try and not use the word health audit because that's got a very negative connotation to it. So it's a health check on the system, but it's an audit. But any one of us that has ever done an audit and been part of an audit know that it can be excruciatingly difficult to get to the right sampling. Because right now, we need to go into a different region, a different language, a different operational model, and interview specific engineers, team leaders, managers of departments of the service industry, and check whether they are now complying to the new process that we've just asked them to adopt 6 months ago. Very difficult, very time-consuming, and it takes a lot of man-hours. It takes people off the bench, off the workbench, because you need to audit them, you need to go through questions, and it's tick lists and all sorts of things. So we used this challenge that the business had as one of the doors for process mining to enter. I said, great, we'll help you with this. We'll limit, not eliminate all of your travel and interaction, because there are some auditing areas where you want to say, show me, I want to see what you do, and you might need to question some people. But at the very least, we'll limit the interaction significantly. So we did the health check preparations, health checks and the health check report as a general way of doing the audits. And then we introduced process mining. So at the top, you'll see from the left to the right, we said to the auditors, when you want to go and do an audit, give me 1 week's notice period. And during that week, I'll plan my process mining activities. I'll do my ETL, I'll do my extract from my BDM that I now have access to, because you can now tell me the scope of your audit. It's one department, one specific area. So I'll extract that. I'll process mine that for a day or two. Give me some time, and it's not necessarily man hours. Sometimes it was elapsed time that we used. And then we'll give you a report. But we'll do that over a 3-week duration. And that 3-week duration will be at the start of your entire auditing period. Initially, people asked us, but why do you do it up front? Why not just do that as part of the audit period, and then you add in your findings and recommendations on the back end of the actual audit report? We said, no, that's not efficient. Because remember, your auditor has a blank canvas. And he or she now knows that they want to go and audit a specific region, a group of people, 20, 30, 40 people, for an incident management process, but they have no idea where to focus on. I said, great, what we'll do from a process mining perspective, we will give you the hotspots, the areas where we already see anomalies prior to the audit, so that when you get to auditing the people, you can change the questions you ask. You can focus and zoom in on specific areas of problems. And that was absolutely huge for the auditors to be able to be pre-warned and have an idea of what they're walking into. And they absolutely loved us. So that was first leg of process mining competency sort of in the bag. And we had, at least from an auditing perspective, we had their ears and they could listen. So what's the takeaway? I think the bottom line is we must never, ever underestimate the importance of people change management and getting business on your side. Otherwise, process mining in dimension data and in my own personal view will always remain a bit of a stepchild on its own, sitting there that you can use ad hoc when you think you want to have a look at the business, but it's not really part of my core business and my skills. And that is what we need to change, because all of us are absolutely passionate about process mining and what it can do for us. So the second example, we then, remember we had the 3 legs that we built our business case on: process, growth, and operations. So now we're going to focus on growth a little bit. Here, a very interesting opportunity arose for a request for proposal. One of the large retail clients came to us and said, or they put a proposal out in the market, and we decided to bid for it. Now, any one of you that's ever done work on RFPs and proposals, you know that the general way of doing it, you have a list of questions to answer that all competitors have to answer. And in those set of questions, they try and outdo each other because should I get the business? I can give you a tighter, stricter SLA. I can give you more freebies. I will do it for cheaper. And what differentiates your company from the next person vying for the same business? Business 101. So you create this RFP with the best intentions, but it's based on all the information that you receive from the company that's asking for the RFP. What we were able to do as a huge differentiator, we were able to process mine their data. Now picture this. Instead of a generalized RFP, a response to a proposal where all the incumbents list their value adds, why they are the best to get the business, what their track record is, we could say, we're all doing that as well. But we see in your business, these are the 2 or 3 areas where you're already burning. So if I get the business, I'm going to focus on those areas specifically in 6 months, year 1, year 2, year 3. Now that's a total game changer, because the person now comparing the RFPs will have a stack of RFPs that are generalized, and they'll say, well, that's great, everybody's got the same answer, and it may be a cost comparison, versus this other one that might not be a cost comparison or a price comparison at all. It might not be the cheapest one. But look at what they can give me. They're already starting to understand my business, and it's not just a bland response to the RFP. We were very fortunate to be able to mine the data. Some of our competitors, unfortunately, had not cottoned on to process mining, so they didn't do it. And not that process mining gave us all the kudos to get the business, but we eventually did get the business, and we look forward to now opening up more doors with our sales and pre-sales people, because now that penny has dropped to say that process mining is something that I can use in my sales environment. If I do, and not just in the pre-sales environment, but if I do get the business, what we all do is we write in a clause that says, I will go and do a due diligence on you during the first month or two, however big the business is. And during the due diligence phase, what I try and do is at least check back that my assumptions that I built my business case on, that I built my pricing models on, were true. And 9 times out of 10, we end up still inheriting something that is not quite 100% what we expected to receive. And I think everybody in the outsource industry here will bear me out. It's always painful, very painful, the first couple of months on any outsource client. Why? Because with the best intentions, we've built the model, we've got the right skills, we've got the right people, everything works. But there's still some underlying operational things that nobody knows about, and they surface. They're like snakes in the grass. And process mining, being part of that due diligence, will really help us to understand what we are inheriting, what we are taking over. So that was our growth phase and how we interacted with our salespeople. So the takeaway on that, it's really to please never underestimate the power of process mining. And it's not just the tool. Disco is fantastic. But it's not just the tool. It's not just the methodology. It is the end-to-end package all wrapped together that you must use in novel ways. A very interesting one we've done is have a look at some of your project methods or some of the projects that you have access to. Have a look at the milestones and the dates and the timestamps on those milestones. Why don't you process mine your project office and the projects that they run? Just as an example. Give it a try and see how a different view of something. Using process mining, it just opens up new doors, new ways of discovering things. And it's not only there for the historical transactional data that happens every 10 seconds and is written out to a log file. It is that as well, but it's more than that. And then lastly, the 2 examples I'm going to show you really talks to the operational business of what we built our business case on. So first off, we have a service, one of our services, MSVC. It's a video bridge and a video and voice service that we supply to our clients. And you'll see some of the names at the top. So there are quite disparate clients, different sizes. And one of the key things that we needed to do was make sure that our services or products remain relevant in the market. Because after a period of time, quite normal, a service will have early adopters, it'll become mainstream, and at some point in time, depending on the service, it'll start waning. And what's very important for business is for us to be able to catch that at the right point in time so that we don't start over-servicing our clients with resources that cost a lot of money, and then the service itself isn't relevant to the client anymore because business has moved on. IT is mercurial, and it's rapidly changing. That's the environment that we live in. So we need to make sure that our services remain relevant. So we took MSVC service and we had a look at it exactly to try and find areas of improvement and whether the service was relevant. Very, very interesting things we saw. First off, some of the observations that I'll take you through. The MSVC service that we provide our clients has event management as part of the service. Yet when we process mined the data, we couldn't find any events. None. 0. Not a single one. Sounds impossible, but that was what we saw. The next thing that we found was feedback delays. Now we're familiar with this. Reworks, loops, these arcs that pop up, and I've got those green dots there on screen, and they really were exceptional long delays in getting feedback from our clients and from our third-party vendors. We also saw no CI association whatsoever, configuration items to these tasks. Our classifications were interesting, to say the least. Quite different to what we expected them to be. And then, of course, our priority bell curves didn't exist, because one would expect lower priority ones, a bit more priority twos, bulk priority threes, priority four types of calls for incidents and events coming in. Didn't pan out. As you can see on the graph, we had a huge amount of priority one calls. So we went back to the business and said, we don't understand this, something's wrong. The data doesn't tell us much about what you do. It doesn't gel. And then we realized that it actually does. So what they had done, some process steps were completely bypassed, and it actually was a technical limitation in the event monitoring system that was known operationally, but it just simply wasn't surfaced. So the only way we saw this, and we then went back into the account, was saying, we don't see any events. And they said, yes, but events are logged differently. They're logged as incidents. So, okay, that's not right. That's why we saw the interesting incident priority ones and classifications. So they used classifications, they used the priority of incidents to bypass or get it to work practically a tool limitation. And that was common practice in the business. But the moment we put process mining on top of that, we could highlight and surface these things, and we could then put a whole rectification plan together where we're now looking at a 180, 360-day rectification plan on this service and this product. That includes making sure that the tool sets do what they're supposed to do, making sure that we remain relevant with the client and that we don't erode our margins. So process mining there in operations became very, very real. So takeaway from that is always check back with business. Never, when you process mine, assume that what you see is the right answer and the only answer. You need to take your findings, your observations, and check back with business on the relevancy and why it's doing what you think it's doing. So the last and final one, which I'll quickly go through, is on one of our quoting processes. Now, this was very interesting because this specific department couldn't use our transactional quoting systems at all. So they asked us to, we've heard of this process mining thing, which is great, because now the business is coming to you. We've heard that this thing exists. Come and help us because we want to optimize our quote process. And we said, fantastic. How does your quote process look? And they say, we have no idea. So that's a good start. So let's have a look. Do you have any data that we could data mine? They said, no data exists because they're not using transactional systems. So there was nothing they could do. So we said, let's start at the basics. So we helped them with a little spreadsheet and a little method of capturing data manually. Now, for some of you, this might go completely against your very being. Capturing data manually doesn't work. It's not a log file. But that was, in reality, the only thing we could do. So they captured the data manually, and after about 3 to 4 weeks, low level of transactions, they gave us the data, and we managed to have a look at it. And we identified 4 main streams through which a quote process ran from the data that they captured. And very quickly, we were able to identify 2 specific ones that were the most, that would benefit from optimization the most. And the first lot, you'll see where the arrows are, we had on the left-hand side, an 88-minute optimization possibility versus a 19-hour optimization possibility. And that equates to a 3% and a 50% improvement opportunity. So we said, fantastic, thank you very much. The best improvement opportunities that you'll get would be from the process on the right. We help them to inculcate and change the process and formalize the process, that this is the way that they should work, and this is the way it will help speed up the business itself and our end-to-end quoting process. And I'm glad to report that it is making some inroads and we're getting there. So to wrap up, there are absolutely no limits on how you can use process mining, Disco the toolset, the entire methodology in the business. Never limit yourself to thinking that you can only use it for process and only for a specific area where you already have the data. So play with it. Your organizations will have different business drivers. But irrespective of your business drivers, we found that the most important thing that we did with business discovery, process mining, is to get those 2 entities, business and process mining as a concept, to start sharing information. because after all, it is the flow of information between nodes, between businesses, between statuses and steps and next steps and entities that show us what we do day to day. So in summary, that's the journey we took for Dimension Data. I really thank you for your time. I appreciate that. And any questions? Thank you.
I would like to start with the first question. So I was wondering which kind of challenges you faced when basically involving these people in these different regions and these different groups. I'm sure, like you said, they don't know what process mining is. They may have some misperceptions, maybe think, oh, this is like a dashboard or something. So what did you have to overcome and how did you manage to get them on board?
Thank you, Anna, for that. I think the most important thing we did was to engage with the regional directors, and we explained to them the importance of standardizing on process, and we used an absolute strong business angle. Standardizing process was needed for the business, so that there was buy-in around that. We said, great, now to standardize your business, we want to make it easier for you and make sure it's more efficient and effective. The penny dropped. So it was a process, probably 3 to 4 months, where we had bi-weekly and monthly engagement, absolute WebEx online VC meetings with those directors, and took them through a little bit of a process mining demo. So we showed them all the nice flows and we showed them areas where things were wrong, but we kept it very high level and lighthearted. But that at least opened their eyes to the possibility that maybe I can start using this, maybe it'll help me if I want to do compliance checking. And we explained in the business case very clearly why we tackled it in these 3 ways. And as I said, probably in a 3 to 4 month period, we managed to get them to give us individual names that would become the champions in their area. And then we grouped those into a virtual community, and that virtual community meets once a month at the very least. And what we do from group is we help and actually train those champions up in process mining. We help them get access to the data that they need. So sometimes it gets technical where we help them write SQL scripting and queries and things to get the data out of our BDM. Other times they're quite au fait and comfortable in doing that themselves, and we just have an oversight and say, well, when you do process mining, please copy me on your report. And then they'll share the report with us and we'll say, well, I'll take half an hour and we'll sit and we'll go through. Very much like you helped us in the beginning also to go through what process mining is all about, and that you still do. We tried to do that within the region, and that was the key thing to get it adopted. Yeah.
Thank you.
You refrained from the words agile and things like that, Scrum. How come? Because everybody has optimization, should be...
Yes, absolutely.
Could you repeat the question? Because
the question was really why I refrained from using specific words like Scrum and Agile and the whole automation drive. We are busy with an automation drive, absolutely, in Dimension Data. The only reason why I'm not focusing on that today is because from a business case, we didn't include that up front. So we left that. It was too infantile at that point in time when we started with the business case to really try and marry the two. Although conceptually one could very easily marry them, but I couldn't show any real immediate optimization, automation benefits or tightly couple the two in the business case. So we said, let's step back from it, let automation and event management in itself mature, and the moment it matures, problems, operational problems and challenges will surface automatically, and people will say, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I can't see what's happening in this area. How can I improve this? And then we jump in and say, I'd like to do some process mining for you, sir. And that's the angle we took. So absolutely, it was purposefully excluded, but only because it was very immature at that point in time. Thank you.
Who has another question? We bring you the microphone with the handheld so you can be heard.
Yes, sir.
You told that you offered process mining results to your business units or your clients. Do you have organized process mining centrally in the competence center of your company, or do business units also process mine themselves?
Initially, we only did it centrally, but through the sheer volume, we simply couldn't do that. So we had to allow business users, units to start doing process mining themselves, with the caveat that we're not giving anybody access to the tool and process mining in general without going through at least some basic understanding of what process mining is. They also have to have a specific set of skills around being inquisitive and being analytical to a degree, because it's very dangerous if you give process mining and something like Disco with the data with respect to the service level managers out there sitting, or account managers in front of the client. Because the message that they'll send might not be the correct one. Because you need to analyze what you're looking at. And right in the beginning I said we always go back to business to check and verify. And I think that is an absolute crucial point where you need to enter into a discussion with your client or your business. This is what I'm seeing. Tell me if this is right. Why is it like this? So we do allow them to do process mining themselves, but on the basis that we play an oversight, or we have an oversight role around that. I hope that answers the question. Okay.
More questions from the audience?
I have two questions. The first one is, how long are your process mining projects? How much time does it take? And also, how big is your engagement team? So if you go for a particular project, how many people is involved? And the second question, do you complement process mining with other types of data analytics and Disco with other tools?
100%. I'll start with the first question. The first one, how long does it take? We've started process mining in Dimension Data roughly, Anna, correct me, 2.5 years ago, somewhere there. So it's taken us a 2-year journey with all of these various elements to get where we are today. It really depends. If you talk about operationally doing process mining on a region or an entity, it varies greatly because it depends on the scope that you want to do. If you want to simply have an overview and what we'd say a mile wide and inch deep view of life, where there's no specific questioning, you can spend 2-3 weeks going down a rabbit hole, because you will analyze some data and you will see things and you'll go further and you'll maybe extract some more data and focus on an area, and a week later you'll find that this avenue is fine and I don't need to go any further, and you'll have to come all the way back. What's crucial that we found before we try and engage on any process mining activity is to formulate the question you want to answer. The moment you formulate your question well, it focuses you on the data that you need, it focuses you on the output, and even if it's not a very deep dive, but a shallower dive, at least you have an entity and a controlled thing that you can look at. So yeah, overall 2.5 years of process mining journey, but individually it depends on region to region. And your second question, just if you could just repeat that one, please.
Other types of data analytics and tools.
Absolutely, yes, we absolutely do. We have a whole MIS, Management Information System, and team running that. Process mining itself, the team that we do is myself and another gentleman from a group perspective, and then we have a counterpart in each one of our regions. So in total, we have 11 people that are process mining able or enabled. Not all of them have bought licenses yet, so a lot of the interaction is that the region will ask us, but we at least have the champion in region. And we hope to disperse the licenses in the near future so that everybody has a proper Disco license at least to do process mining. The other tools we're using, there's a variety of tools. We use ClickView, we use Tableau as MIS and different tools. And yes, the two do marry. What we've embarked on, we have Corporator as a dashboard, and I'm not punting any of the tools by name. I'm just, as they come up in my mind, I'm mentioning them. What we have done is, from a process mining and process perspective, we needed to draw a line between operational metric that your team leaders and business will run, SLA conformance as an example. From a process perspective, although we are worried about SLA conformance is already managed properly by a team, by operational entities, and has the whole suite of reporting with it. So we don't need to now again go and report on SLA conformance. We will report things on process-specific metrics like the time between various life cycle stages, average times, mean times, median times, to see how we can optimize these things. We would look at the amount of steps in the life cycle of a task. How many times each one of these steps we used, because it's not all linear. And if we find that we have some steps in a process that are used in a very ad hoc fashion, few and far between, we can then question whether they're necessary at all, and we can remove them. And that makes our working instructions, our tooling instructions, and our training for the technicians less, easier to understand, and it just takes a lot of the variability out of it, so it's easier to manage and contain. So yes, we use a whole variety of other tools as well.
One more question, yes?
When you use process mining for compliance, or in general, when you do auditing, you need to ensure the authorities about the approach that you took to reach the results, and that's normally need to be legally documented. How did you basically show the authorities that the approach that you use process mining isn't enough and sufficient evidence for the authorities?
Very good question, absolutely.
Can you repeat the question?
We needed to... The question really, if I may ad-lib, was around how did we ensure that the process mining we did when we wanted to do auditing was legally documented and correctly shared with the business so that it becomes a legal way of doing it with sufficient data and well known. That's sort of the... What we do is part of that initial period of process mining prior to the audit happening is we don't just simply document our findings on an email and then send it to the auditor. What we do is we formally report on the process mining in a formal report, and therein we detail the data that we extracted, very importantly, and how we extracted the data. We also copy and save the actual, if it's a SQL query, as an example, we actually store the SQL query with its own name, date and timestamp in a repository, and that's the query we ran at this point in time to get this data. We then store the data. If you're exporting into, let's say, CSV and you want to import it into Disco, if that's the route you're taking, then we keep the native or raw CSV data as is. Then we import that into Disco. We also make sure that in the toolset itself, we export this case file, and we keep that saved as well. So that there's an audit trail if you need to go back 6 months later or 6 years and say, well, how did you come to the findings? So that's sort of some of the preliminary work we do. And then we formally document what we find with screenshots. We can still go back because the Disco file is there, the raw data file is there, so we can remine it. But we formally then document our approach, our findings and observations, and then also what the auditor should be looking for, and some guidance that we give. Sometimes, like an audit report, it won't be a finding, it'll just be an observation. And that is a formal document that is published and then given to the auditor. And in some cases, we have found that the auditors would use that to a different level to a different degree. Some people would use all the information and really focus their audit around what we suggest. Others would use that as an add-on. But they are still then legally required to produce the audit report at the end. And the audit report is the final say of what the audit looked like. So we're most certainly not trying to replace the audit report with a Disco export. In that case, definitely not. The audit report is still the valid one, but they can see that process mining and Disco and all the other methods and the data extraction, how we got to it, and that's what we gave as input into the audit. That sort of answer.
Okay, thank you, and let's give Jan another round of applause.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much.